Too Much Information is a production of iHeart Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Information, the show that brings you the secret history and little-known facts behind your favorite movies, music, TV shows, and more. We're your misfits of minutia, your bumbles of banality, your dental fetishizing elves of entertainment trivia. My name is Jordan Runtagh.
Isn't Bumble a dating app at this point? It is. I know for a fact it is.
Yeah, but Yukon Cornelius calls the abominable snowman Bumbles for some reason. Bumbles bounce. Maybe it's Bumbles plural.
Okay. And I'm Alex Heigl, a condescending music major from a recent September review of this show. And I would like to correct that listener respectfully. I minored in jazz and majored in English, which is also the reason that I am where I am. So, sir or madam, thank you for the review.
Well, today we're talking about what I'm pretty confident in calling the most beloved TV special in history, wouldn't you say?
It's up there. Yeah, for sure. I'm hard pressed to think of another that I mean, I don't know. Did you grow up with like your family watching Wizard of Oz every year?
No, Sound of Music was more our jam for lengthy cinematic feature that was put on network TV to eat up the hours while hosts and stuff went on. Yeah.
Or I should say it's this or Christmas Story, which we've already done.
Yes.
So,
yes, this is a holiday mainstay that's about to notch its 59th consecutive Christmas, making it the longest-running Yuletide TV spectacular of all time. From the folks at Rankin, creators of some of the most distinctive yet slightly unnerving stop-motion animation, we're talking about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Heigl, I gotta say, given your ambivalence towards my cherished Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I'd assume that you would be equally indifferent to this televisual tradition, if you will. But I was surprised when you were actually the one who suggested we do it. So yeah, tell me more. What's your history with Rudolph and the Rankin Bass oeuvre?
I just love stop motion animation.
Really?
I think it is such a fascinating footnote in film history. I mean, the fact that it was kept alive longer than it sort of should have been.
Yeah.
By like the same three people. It's like, Ray Harryhausen and his Willis O'Brien, his mentors, and then like.
Wait, what do those guys do? I don't know the names. I only know Tim Burton for Nightmare Before Christmas.
Well, Harry Selnick was the director of that, and he was the guy who just executed all of Burton's stuff.
Oh.
But and he is actually like Coraline was him as well,
right?
So he has actually kept that flame alive for, as I said again, an unreasonably long amount of time. Willis O'Brien was the guy who did King Kong and Mighty Joe Young, and like the early monster movies, and then his protege was Willis O'Brien, who's like. Did a lot of that through the 50s and 60s and probably most remembered today for doing Jason and the Argonauts. He did that, not just the Kraken, but he did that insane fight scene where they basically choreographed an entire fight scene with the actors. I'm unsure of the order, with the actors, and then he animated the same fight scene with stop motion skeletons, and then they composited them, and it is just like an insane technical feat. Yeah, and that was just like as a thing of me just like reading about how movies were made and getting into like the effects world and kind of behind that. And it is such a damn pain in the ass though. Like it's so funny about it is that people like Harry Selnick is God love him for keeping this flame alive, or like the Wallace and Gromit guys, where it's just like. That is an insane labor of love. And the returns on it are really not that like he obviously knocked it out of the park with Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, but like, I don't think some of his other projects have been as successful as either one of those. And, Wallace and Gromit has just done so, I think, infrequently, that I just admire people's, it's just the same through line to all of my art stuff. I admire people's dedication to things that should not by any right continue to exist.
I hadn't really thought about situations where stop motion animation was used in conjunction with humans in the movie. I was thinking of just things like where it was just purely stop motion animation for, style's sake. But I forgot about how a lot of those early monster movies, the scenes with the monsters were stop motion.
Yeah, I mean, he actually Willis O'Brien won an Oscar in 1950 for Mighty Joe Young, which is the giant ape movie that isn't King Kong. But, you know, he was working as far as the early Edison films, not the even earliest, but like in 1917, he was working on stop motion stuff for Thomas friggin' Edison. So Willis O'Brien is like a very formative figure, and even though his discipline has kind of been phased out, you know, it lives on through not just his protege, his immediate protege, and Ray Harryhausen, but now guys like Harry Selnick and everything. And, you know, there is something that's so fascinating about it to me, because it really does have there's something so uncanny about them that's still so, and it gets it like in the Freudian sense, which I think I've also talked about on this show before. But like that kind of unease that comes from you looking at something and going, that's alive and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And it's personified. So, you know, all the tricks of animation are kind of brought to the fore with it, where you imbue it with personality via these exaggerated features, and that all plays into the design of it, and then it's moving, but you're still like, there's something a little bit off about that. And that's what the tug of it is for me.
I'm so glad you said that, because, yeah, like I said in the intro, they always seemed a little, especially these Rankin Bass ones, a little unnerving to me. Mm-hmm. Especially like in The Year Without a Santa Claus with the Heat Miser, like all the evil characters that are stop motion.
The villain designs on these are incredible and iconic, you know. And I think Pixar like kind of stole a bunch of their shit, whether or not they'd admit to it or not. Like,
for legal reasons.
Yes, that is hearsay.
Well, obviously, I love the Rudolph special, and not just because I'm deeply sentimental and cling to any and all traditions, but I especially love just how gloriously early 60s it looks. It's that style of it. Like, I mean, you know what? I think we both like this for the same reason, but come at it from different angles. You like it because the art form is antiquated and it has no business existing anymore. I like it because just the style of it, it's not like anything you see on TV anymore, and I'm shocked to see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure that there's already, like, I don't even know where it's at, where people are, because, you know, like South Park was made with like construction paper cutouts and is now using extraordinarily sophisticated animation and rendering software to maintain that style.
Make it look that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that people are doing similar things with stop motion, but yeah, I mean, it is such a specific way of working with things. That's constantly fascinating to me.
Like Robot Chicken's the only show I can think of right now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if they're still on, but yeah. I just love how wildly goofy this Rudolph special is.
Yeah.
And I think we're also used to it nearly, 6 decades after it premiered, but I think we've forgotten just how random it is. I mean, there's no explanation why Rudolph has a red nose. There's no explanation, in my memory at least, why this elf wants to be a dentist. You've got the Misfit Toys. You've got an abominable snowman. You've got this snowman with the voice of Burl Ives. It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah, the dentist thing always shook me.
Yeah.
I was like, surely there were other avenues for you. Because now you're kind of begging the question, like, do elves get cancer? Like, do elves, what are they, their STDs? Like, dentist presupposes an entire range of medical issues. Does it not?
Merry Christmas, everyone. From Heigl and me. I mean, yeah, what other career do you think Hermie, who is not Herbie, by the way? A lot of websites go out of their way to specify that it's Hermie for some reason. But, yeah, what do you think Hermie seems?
Meth lab. I mean, everyone wants to say it's magic, but, like, they've got to be tweaking. And if you bring that, like, Walter White level of, like, technical know-how to making meth, especially, I mean, God, in the 50s, they would have been out of their minds on Dexedrine, writing the elf version of On the Road on a single unbroken ream of paper.
I mean,
God, can you imagine elf beat poetry? How much that would have sucked. All kind of racist, like Jack Kerouac was, like weird fetishizing black people kind of stuff. Writing about jazz. Just gacked out of their little minds. That's going into our pitch show. It doesn't exist.
And that's how we get the Perry Como Christmas album. Well, not sure I'm going to edit around that. Probably won't. From the devastating in real life origin story of the titular reindeer, which is so much sadder than all of the other reindeer laughing and calling him names, the controversy surrounding his red nose, and the IRL reason this could occur in the first place, to the insane lengths producers went to create these puppets and the insane amounts that fans paid for them decades later, here is everything you didn't know about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, we're gonna do the whole history of Rudolph, even before the TV special.
Good. The people should know.
They should. Rudolph's story began, appropriately enough, with a Jewish man. I have to say, Jewish people were responsible for the best Christmas stuff. You got Irving Berlin's White Christmas. You got Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, which is written by Johnny Marks, who also wrote Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the song, as we'll talk about. And we got the Phil Spector Christmas album, which, say what you will about Phil Spector, great Christmas album. Robert May is the man who created Rudolph while working as a copywriter for Montgomery Ward. The department store chain was in the habit of giving away pre-bought coloring books to kids around Christmas time, but for Christmas 1939, they planned something special, a cheery, soft-cover storybook for children. Making something themselves was deemed cheaper than buying pre-existing coloring books. Capitalism is the mother of invention in this case. To write the original story, they tapped Robert May, who chiefly worked as a copywriter for Montgomery Ward's mail order catalog division. What must have that been like? Hey, yeah, can you come here? All right, stop writing about underwear for 6 seconds. We got a job for you. Can you write like some limericks or something about some animals? The company brass specifically said that they wanted an animal, and they wanted it to be like Ferdinand the Bull, that children's book, because I think Disney had recently made it into a short film. Which I don't really remember that, but
You know who does?
Who?
Lena Dunham. She's got that big Ferdinand tattoo.
I'm shocked how quickly you pulled that out. Is it because people confuse you for Jack Antonoff?
As you were.
Okay, I was taping an interview with somebody, and they said that I look like Tim the Toolman Taylor's co-host Al Borland.
Oh yeah,
which I don't see. I have a beard and sort of that hair, but I don't.
Yeah. No, it's kind of hurtful.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. You, Billy Bush. That's who it was. That's who it was, folks. It was Billy Bush. The second worst thing Billy Bush has done. I don't know if I'll keep that, but I have it on tape, though.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Second thing he's got on tape.
Hey-oh, golf swing.
Where are we? Oh yeah. So the brass, they wanted this copywriter, Robert May, to write a Christmas story about an animal, and May chose a reindeer, which is not only Christmassy, but it was a favorite of his 4-year-old daughter. He would often take her to Chicago's Lincoln Park Zoo on Saturday mornings, and they would look at the deer together, which is sweet. Savor that sweet moment, because things are about to get really, really sad. You see, Robert May was not in a good place when he first received the assignment to write what would become Rudolph in early 1939. He would later recall, "Here I was, heavily in debt at nearly 35, still grinding out catalog copy. Instead of writing the great American novels I'd once hoped, I was describing men's white shirts." Too real on the eve of my 36th birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Hey, but it worked out for him.
It did work. Well, we'll get to that. It didn't work out for him in the way that it should have. As if these professional dissatisfactions weren't bad enough, he was writing the descriptions of a weeping, lonesome reindeer as his wife was dying. In a 1975 article for the Gettysburg Times, he described going to work on a cold January day soon after receiving this assignment and feeling, quote, relieved that holiday street decorations had been taken down, saying, "My wife was suffering from a long illness and I didn't feel very festive." His wife Evelyn died on July 28, 1939, leaving Robert May a widower with his 4-year-old daughter. Though his boss tried to reassign the project, May insisted on finishing it himself. He would say, "I needed Rudolph more than ever."
Yeah, right. Tough. Real tough stuff.
And now we're going to pull ourselves out of it by getting pedantic. At this phase...
Yes! Pedantry!
Heigl, you should take this.
Yeah, why not? But at this phase, the deer was not yet called Rudolph. Santa's reindeer already had names: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen.
I thought Nixon was one of them. Henry.
Never mind. I'm not going there. It's just a reindeer being like, the real problem with the Jews is
Henry.
Jesus
R.I.P.
Christ. Yeah, right. Rest in piss. They were named
There's somebody listening now who's angry that we said something not nice about Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, of course there is. They were named in the 1820s poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, but May found himself stuck coming up with the name of this new ninth reindeer that he was grafting onto the pre-existing legend. For alliterative purposes, which are the best purposes, he dreamed up a list of names that began with R, which include Rollo, Rodney, Roland, Roderick, and Reggie. In a 1963 interview, he said that Rollo seemed too happy for a reindeer with an unhappy problem. Reginald seemed too sophisticated, but Rudolph rolled off the tongue nicely.
Does it?
I don't think it... Well, I mean, I guess they would have been not that far out from, like, Rudy Valentino, and, like...
Oh.
I associate that with, like, a sort of Silent Star era name. I also would take... Reggie... I love Reggie the reindeer. That's great.
Reggie the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah. Well, it's
That's
kind of hard to say,
perfect.
though. Reggie the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Roddy the red-nosed reindeer?
Roddy the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Because then you have a Roddy McDowell kind of connection, which...
That was that, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Roddy the Red-Nosed Reindeer. What
are we even saying at this point to each other? Anyone listening to this would be like, those men are insane. They are not dealing well with the realities of life. And I would say you're correct, sir, imaginary listener, Sir Madden. Okay, with the name in place, May kept working on the story, drawing on some elements of his past. The character of Rudolph was loosely inspired by the story of the Ugly Duckling, which was a favorite of May's as a young boy, a time when he was shy and small and knew what it was like to be an underdog. Later, May majored in psychology at Dartmouth, where he was exposed to the work of Alfred Adler. Adler theorized that humans are motivated by a search for perfection and self-assertion stemming from a desire to overcome feelings of inferiority.
How do you feel about that?
It tracks. Was this guy a Nazi? Let's see. Later career. Oh, he was pissed that he thought Freud plagiarized from him. Oh no, he was Jewish. He was not a Nazi. Oh, here you go. Adler was concerned with the overcoming of the superiority-inferiority dynamic and was one of the first psychotherapists to discard the analytic couch in favor of two chairs, allowing the clinician and patient to sit together, more or less as equals. So there you go. There's a tenuous connection. That's the TMI promise. There's a tenuous connection to the guy who got rid of the therapy couch to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We gotta come up with a stinger, like a sound, like a da-da-da for, it's Charlie Brown. But
I literally wrote in brackets further down, insert the more you know theme here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the TMI guarantee. Several of the stories that May wrote for children involved a hero striving to overcome a physical handicap that had produced a deep sense of inferiority. One of them had a real small dick, too. Tell you that right now.
How did he save Christmas with that? Is that the design for where Christmas tree lights came from?
Jordan,
you could even say it glowed.
That's good. That's good. Keep that in. I beg of you. Yeah. That's good.
Did your parents ever tell you the ugly duckling story as a kid to try to cheer you up when something was going wrong or you're feeling weird?
No. All of my like childhood inferiority things came from just people like making fun of my precociousness, which is justified because precocious children are awful and turn into unbearable adults.
I can't imagine getting teased for that.
Oh, my mom will endlessly talk about the time when I came home from school in tears because a child had called me a dictionary.
Oh,
I would have
taken that as a compliment.
He said Alex's mom didn't give birth to a child. She gave birth to an 9-pound dictionary, which was like a relatively
sick
sophisticated burn for like a 10-year-old. Anyway, that kid might be dead now.
I was famous for like the first time I went to the dentist when I was like 3, I wouldn't open my mouth until he showed me his diploma on the wall, which is a story that my dad loves to tell. And whenever we would go to restaurants that were named after somebody, like Denny's or Michael's or Wendy's or something, I would always, when the server would come by, I would insist on speaking to said name of the place. So that was the kind of kid I was.
Okay, well, did you ask to speak to the chef afterwards?
No, they would bring me, and this says so much. I don't know if I'll keep this because this might not be interesting to anyone other than you, but they would bring me, and I don't know how this started, a glass of maraschino cherries and a calculator. And I would just punch the calculator while scowling. I called it my gubba gubba. And I just would punch the calculator as if I was Scrooge, just like entering data into this thing and while popping maraschino cherries.
All right. Just goes another thing that goes into my rich tapestry of you. As you meditate on that, we'll be right back with more Too Much Information after these messages.
And from maraschino cherries to red noses. Kind of looks like a maraschino cherry, right? My transitions, I'm trying. I'm really trying. So in this case, said physical handicap for this reindeer was his red nose. So shiny, in fact, you could probably get away with saying that it glows.
One could.
One could. The idea supposedly came to writer Robert May when he was staring out his office window in downtown Chicago. A thick fog had swept in across Lake Michigan, blocking his view, but providing a flash of inspiration. He recalled, "Suddenly I had it. A nose. A bright red nose that would shine through the fog like a spotlight." This was not his first idea. May considered giving Rudolph large headlight-like eyes that would light the way, which is both horrifying and so metal.
It actually is.
Can you
that's really frightening.
Yeah.
Just like this reindeer turning its enormous glowing orbs here. It's funny because in the Mike Flanagan series, the Haunting of Blythe Manor, the main character is haunted by a vision of her spoiler alert deceased boyfriend, who has like these enormous glowing eyes, and what it is eventually revealed to be is that she saw him get hit by a car, and the last thing she saw was the headlights illuminating his glasses.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dope.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, he ended up changing it to noses because he figured that kids would be much more apt to pick on somebody's nose rather than their eyes, which is fair.
Yeah.
Hilariously, Robert May's bosses feared that the distinctive red nose feature was a liability because red noses at that time were generally associated with stereotypes of drunkards.
Yeah, like W.C. Fields, right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
May responded to these concerns by taking Denver Gillen, a friend from Montgomery Ward's art department, to the Lincoln Park Zoo to sketch some deer. And these preliminary sketches of a red-nosed reindeer were enough to calm any fears that the public would think that Rudolph struggled with alcoholism.
Well, you know, that's where the band Gin Blossoms got their name. That was like an archaic term for having the burst capillaries in your cheek. They were called Gin Blossoms. Hey, jealousy. It's a great song.
Didn't think we'd get there tonight.
Yeah, you know. That's the TMI guarantee, baby.
It's my favorite Christmas song. Kind of works. Christmas morning under a tree, your sister gets something that's way better than what you got.
I prefer to think of my 90s grunge song of Christmas as Black Hole Sun.
What's the best Christmas present you ever got, Heigl?
The one that I was most excited about probably would have been like a PlayStation or something, like a video game system, or like a play set of some kind. Yeah, I'm gonna say the PlayStation. I was big into video games. What about you?
Yeah, probably something like that. I got Do you remember Virtual Boys?
Was that like the Game Boy?
Yeah, they were only made for like 18 months, and then they were taken off the market, I think, because they gave kids seizures. But my parents had no problem. I'm sure they got it cheap for that reason. But yeah, it was the weirdest thing. It was like a virtual reality, like Oculus thing that was on a stand, and you just would kind of sit next to it and put your head in.
Yeah.
And it was just all in red. And they only had like a couple games for it, but it was just the coolest thing. They had a bowling game, so I really love that.
Oh, of course you did. Cute.
Yeah. But in real life, back to Rudolph, a red nose on a reindeer is no laughing matter. According to Norwegian scientists, Rudolph's red nose is likely the result of a parasitic infection of the respiratory system.
Jesus Christ.
Parasitic infection of the respiratory system. Insert the more you know theme. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Parasitic infection.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer
had a
parasitic infection. And if you ever saw it, you'd probably say, you should get that looked at.
Rudolph loved a woman who wasn't clean. And then had to go to the doctor for recurring shots of penicillin. And as the syphilis ate away at his brain, Rudolph used to say, "They're coming to get me, I'll throw feces." And then he died one day.
Not before crashing his sleigh into the White House.
This all goes into that book, Program to Kill, that I'm reading, where it's like, did you know Rudolph was a deep state CIA rogue agent gone awry? He was actually programmed to drive that sleigh into the White House.
Wait, who wrote that? Is that an Annie Jacobson book?
No, it's David McGowan.
Oh, right. Oh, my gosh. Who fans of TMI will know he wrote the book Strange Scenes in the Canyon, which is all about conspiracy theories involving the 60s, early 70s Laurel Canyon music scene, which is very compelling. And some very kind people suggested we should do a series on that. And you better believe I've been trying to make that happen for years.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying. I watched the John Lennon assassination documentary last night.
Oh, yeah? Pick up any good tips?
I heard The Catcher in the Rye is pretty good. Yeah, it's on Apple Plus. Yeah. Really, John Lennon, Murder Without a Trial.
I remember them hyping that they discovered his last words, and wasn't it just, "I got shot"?
No, people knew that.
Oh, okay. Oh, great then.
Yeah, there wasn't really. Yeah, it was just, there was interesting footage. It interviews with people who'd never talked before, but it was stuff like a guy in a cab next to the shooting site and stuff like that. It wasn't like anything great. Yeah. The thing that I found really interesting that they didn't talk about, and I was really sad, was because he left the recording studio, and the producer at the recording studio was this guy, Jack Douglas, and he'd produced Double Fantasy, which was John's last album. And he was shot within like 20 minutes of leaving the recording studio. And Jack Douglas later said, on the last night he was alive, when he was in the studio, we had the mics were open and we were recording. And he said something. And he said that it was so upsetting.
Oh, you've told me about this. Yeah.
That he ended up, following John's death, erasing the tape and never speaking about it again. There are all these theories about what John said, in the hours before his death, ranging from, just a joke about like, what's my legacy going to be after I'm gone, to him having a terminal illness, to him saying that he was going to divorce Yoko, to all sorts of theories about what was going on with him in those last hours. And we'll never know. And they didn't probe him on that. And I'm sad. That was a missed opportunity in the documentary.
Where were we?
Writing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So Robert May, the copywriter from Montgomery Ward, the department store, he's writing his copy for this freebie softcover book for kids, which will become Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And he wrote the text in about 50 hours, which is about as much time as I spend on an episode of TMI. He would make a lot more for his 50 hours. For you linguistic nerds out there, his story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is written as a poem in anapestic tetrameter.
What did you say to me?
Watch your mouth.
Yeah, you kiss your mother with that mouth.
It's the same meter as the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the last thing I remember about any kind of poetry was that guy that, other than my reading about the last days of John Berryman, which I do late at night.
Tell me about that. I don't know anything about that.
Oh, I mean, he was just a classic miserable drunk. But my favorite detail is that he supposedly someone saw him jumping off the bridge in Minneapolis, and he waved on the way down. And also failed to hit the water and hit the banks and like broke both of his legs and died from exposure, not hitting the water. So that's all very grim. But I remember when that guy at the Zoom meeting at the LA City Council or whatever, that was like he got famous for saying telling the police chief to suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. F you. You remember that?
No, do not. No.
That guy became like a folk hero. Anyway, that's an iambic pentameter.
Can you beat it out for me?
Yeah, suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. F you.
Shakespeare would be so proud.
He truly would. I mean, finally somebody got something out of him. It took fucking hundreds of years. Oh, we got the Lion King too. So it's Lion King and the guy telling the LA County Chief Police to go f himself. Two things out of Shakespeare. Worth it. Worth it.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Ooh.
You're just too good to be true.
Keith.
Weird thing about 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. The authorship is up for debate. There's a whole theory about who actually wrote it. It's generally credited to Clement Moore, who was a Federalist in the early 1800s.
Sick.
And he wrote a whole pamphlet, which I guess was the preferred media back then, against Thomas Jefferson, because he thought Thomas Jefferson didn't like black people. And
correct. Correctly so.
Yes. Anyway, Robert May's original story, I should say, of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, varies a fair amount from the one more familiar song. For example, in May's story told in his original book, Santa finds Rudolph while delivering presents to the reindeer village. Santa, he had problems delivering gifts because no one remembered to leave the lights on for him. Which is really funny. And in Rudolph's dark house, Santa, quote, tripped on a rug and fell flat on his back. And he discovers Rudolph and his glowing nose, and he invites him to help with the rest of the drop-off. So Rudolph jumps at the honor, leaves a note for his parents, and takes off. Not as dramatic. It sounds like a dad problem. Damn kids turn the light off, and then, yeah.
It does sound, it's a pratfall. You're describing a pratfall.
Yeah, right, yeah. I mean, Chevy Chase as Santa. So yeah, that kind of seems more like a first draft idea. But he finished the text, Robert May did, in August 1939. And he would recall that he called his young daughter Barbara in and her grandparents into the living room and read the story to him. And in their eyes, he said, I could see that the story accomplished what I'd hoped.
Misery.
The result was as much of a hit as you could possibly have for a freebie holiday promotional item. Montgomery Ward distributed 2.4 million copies of the Rudolph booklet in 1939 alone. And although during World War II there was a paper shortage, by 1946, the year after the war, 6 million copies had been distributed, which is pretty crazy.
Damn.
Yeah. And by the mid-1940s, there was serious demand for Rudolph licensing opportunities, but because Robert May had done the story as a work-for-hire project, Montgomery Ward held the copyright, and for many years, May received no royalties for his creation. That's such a 21st century move right there.
Yeah.
Let that be a lesson to all you employees who do creative work for big corporations. Try to get a piece of that early on, or at least ad revenue. This just really added insult to injury because Robert May was still deeply in debt due to his late wife's medical bills. But then, in 1946, 7 years after Rudolph debuted, he got a Christmas miracle. I cannot believe this occurred. This would never in a million years happen today. Montgomery Ward, the department store company, voluntarily turned the rights to Rudolph over to Robert May, the creator.
What an insane thing that would never happen today.
No,
Today
yeah.
they would be squeezing more out of him.
They did wait until January so that they could get one more Christmas season out of it.
Yeah. That's hilarious. That's nice, though. That has
It is
somewhat
nice.
of a happy ending. At least he got to retire off that, you know?
No, actually. So at first, Robert May, he tried to transform this freebie softcover book into a bona fide hardcover release, but he struggled to find a publisher because 6 million copies of his book had already been given away for free. And he later said, finally, I found the publisher, a little guy with a big nose who said that he knew what it was like for Rudolph and was willing to take a chance on printing. This little guy was Harry Elbaum, head of Maxton Publishers, and Maxton published the first commercial edition of Rudolph just in time for the 1947 Christmas season. Printed 100,000 copies of the hardcover book, and it quickly became a bestseller. But that's not all.
Rudolph didn't take off until it was transformed into a song by Johnny Marks, who just happened to be, it sounds like the first guy to get killed in a gangster movie. They got Johnny Marks the other night.
Over on Claxton Boulevard.
Are we going to go to war over Johnny Marks? Johnny Marks just happened to be Robert May's brother-in-law. But this wasn't your average, run-of-the-mill case of holiday-related nepotism. No, Marks actually has several Yuletide classics to his name, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree and A Holly Jolly Christmas, as well as other songs from the TV special and a bunch of lesser-known Christmas songs. Chuck Berry wrote a Run, Rudolph, Run song that he got credit for because he created the Rudolph character. Oh, the music industry. Capitalism. Marks would eventually publish 175 pieces of original music, ranging from television scores to radio hits and commercial jingles. So he was already a professional songwriter when his brother-in-law, Robert May, approached him to turn his creation into a song. Also, May is related to Stephen D. Levitt, who some of your podcast listening and or policy wonk friends will know from reading the enormously popular book Freakonomics. May's sister was the grandmother of the economist who wrote that. So do with that what you will. Back to the song. Marks struggled with the project at first. He would call his first attempt easily one of the worst songs ever written. He was eventually able to spruce it up and pitch to singers like Bing Crosby, who was busy beating his children at the time, Dinah Shore, and Perry Como, all of whom passed. Perry Como wanted to tweak the lyrics, though, and Johnny Marks refused. Do we know what the nature of those changes were?
I don't know. I was going to ask you.
Marks also presented the song to Gene Autry, the so-called singing cowboy, who turned him down at first. But Autry's wife, Ina, was touched by this underdog tale and persuaded her husband to record it. Released just in time for the 1949 holiday season, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer shot to the top of Billboard's country, western, and pop charts. It sold 2 million copies that year and went on to become one of the best-selling Christmas songs of all time, second only to White Christmas, which, if All I Want for Christmas Is You hasn't toppled that record, nothing will, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
The success of the Christmas song made Autry try again at Easter with Here Comes Peter Cottontail. Oh, I hate that song. Since Autry recorded it, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer has sold more than 150 million copies, thanks to versions by the Jackson 5, the California Raisins, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Simpsons, the Wiggles, and even old Bing Crosby, who dusted off his knuckles and when
Cracked them into the mic.
When did we hone on to this image as Bing Crosby as solely being known for beating his children? As part of our brand
children.
identity, though. But
if you beat your children, I kind of think it's one of the main things you should maybe be known for.
that's also true. That's totally fair.
That's the TMI promise.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, an honorable mention does go to Chuck Berry, who wrote Run, Rudolph, Run in 1958, and then was sued by Johnny Marks for copyright infringement and thus had to turn over a songwriting credit to that song to him. Fun note about the Finnish version of the Rudolph song, not that any of you asked or ever would, it's called Petteri. Petteri, for some reason. The Finnish legend of Santa Claus, aka Joulupukki, doesn't feature named reindeer, so the intro to the song doesn't include Dasher, Danner, Donner, etc. Instead, the Finnish intro to the song translates to You remember Cinderella, Snow White, and Sleeping Beauty. Little Red Riding Hood, and the Grey Wolf. But this reindeer is often forgotten.
It's a much more cerebral intro, I feel like.
Yeah, and it does the loads work of elevating Rudolph into the pantheon, you know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's on par with Sleeping Beauty.
I know more about Rudolph than I do about Sleeping Beauty.
Well, as of now.
She was sleeping and there was a spinning wheel involved.
Snow White? Would you put Snow White on par with Rudolph? That's doing a grave disservice to Snow White.
Yeah, they're both wintry. I'd put them on par. I've definitely seen Rudolph stuff more often than I have in Snow White.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I also never knew Little Red Riding Hood had a specific wolf, and that it was, I mean, I knew that there was a specific wolf, but is that like a named character in like the Finnish version? Like the wolf gets, I guess they mean that,
wolf.
Yeah, like the wolf gets like second billing.
Is it the same big bad wolf that blows down the Three Little Pigs' house?
No,
different wolf.
Different wolf. Well, let's take a look.
Let's go to the phones.
Little Red Riding Hood.
It's definitely the big bad wolf in both. Because there's that song, "Hey, Little Red Riding Hood."
God, that song rules.
Yeah, it does.
Color of the wolf is not specified, nor is he referred to as
big or bad.
Big or bad, at least in the Grimm, going back to the Grimm brothers.
I could see the Norse version of this story elevating the wolf to marquee.
Where were we?
Have we talked about how Johnny Marks wrote Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree in addition to writing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Several times at this point, but would you like to go deeper on it? Rocking around Christmas tree. You said
she was 13.
Yeah, she was 13, and it's amazing how she already sounds like a 25-year-old drunk cocktail waitress in, like, you know, Bemidji, Wisconsin. Rocking around. I get you some more coffee, hun.
She has the #1 song in the country today.
Good for her.
Which is great.
I'm merely
She's
remarking
broken the record. Brenda Lee, everyone.
I'm merely remarking she had a preternaturally wizened voice as a 13-year-old.
That is true. That is true. She is our #1. She took down Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey's run of tyranny as the Queen of Christmas is now over.
Is that because is it on TikTok now? Is that why?
What's it been and they made a YouTube video for it too.
Oh, okay.
And because people like it, and because she's a sweet old lady. She has the record of being the oldest person to ever have a #1, and the longest gap between #1s, which was like 63 years, I think.
Damn.
62 years, something insane. Yeah.
Good for her. Was she cool?
Yeah.
A little bit racist?
Yeah, I interviewed her today. No, she was cool. I was like, yeah, hey, did Mariah reach out and say anything? Like, did she cede the Christmas Queen crown to you? And she was like, no, she hasn't. I haven't heard from her yet. And you know what? If I don't hear from her soon, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to go take her from her myself. And I was like, bless you.
Yeah, I mean, Mariah's probably more likely to send a subpoena or a horse head.
She sent flowers after us, like as soon as the interview was over, which I'm mad about because I was going to make the headline. 78-year-old Brenda Lee
threatens Mariah Carey.
Yeah, beat the crown of Christmas out of Mariah Carey.
That's awesome.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Too Much Information in just a moment.
Where the hell were we?
We were at Rudolph the Red Hot Media Property.
Ah, yes. Well, Robert May, the creator of Rudolph, quit his copywriting job at Montgomery Ward after they gave him the rights to his creation, and he spent about a decade managing his newfound franchise. At the end of 1950, the Chicago Tribune wrote, "There is no question but that Rudolph has become a legend. The first new and accepted Christmas legend since Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and Clement Moore's A Visit from St. Nicholas." During the 1950s, there were over 100 different Rudolph products produced. But by 1958, Rudolph sales had declined considerably, and by the early 60s, May found himself asking for his old copywriting job back, later joking that he reminded his old bosses of the company policy, Montgomery Ward's, "We'll take anything back." Grim. He would remain with Ward's until he retired in 1970, at which point he began passing his time bowling, golfing, and growing 15-foot-tall tomato plants that reached the second story of his house. May's second wife died in 1971, and the following year he married her sister, Claire. Weird. 5 years later, fittingly, May himself died in 1976, America's bicentennial year.
A fitting end to this truly bizarre American story. But thankfully, Robert May did live to see the beloved TV special take shape. And yet another fortuitous connection, his brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, who wrote the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song, lived in New York City's East Village next to Arthur Rankin Jr. Now, in 1960, Rankin formed Rankin Bass Productions with collaborator Jules Bass, and the two began producing children's TV specials. Arthur Rankin's Wikipedia page is kind of nuts. He's credited on over 1,000 TV programs, and he's also married to, I don't know this person. Do you know her? Olga Karlatos? She's a Greek actress known for performing in Italian horror movies.
So, not very good ones? No,
Seems like something you'd be into.
No, I mean, all you need to know about the Italian film industry is that they didn't start shooting with synchronized sound until, like, the 90s. So... This is the famous thing about why the dubbing is off in all of those movies is because every actor was speaking their own language, and then they would do all of the dialogue ADR.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is why it's always a mess in like those spaghetti westerns and stuff.
Arthur Rankin reached out to Johnny Marks, who wrote the Rudolph Christmas song, to broach the possibility of putting Rudolph on television as part of the GE Fantasy Hour, a branded series of TV specials sponsored by General Electric. Robert May's past with Montgomery Ward was actually helpful with this because an old executive from Ward's now worked at GE as the vice president of housewares. A general electrician engineer named Nick Holonyak developed the first LED light bulb around this time, capable of emitting visible red light, which was the same bulb used for Rudolph's bioluminescent nose in the TV special. So a little product placement there.
Do you know that? I completely didn't know that Rankin Bass did the Hobbit. Yeah.
Yeah, the Hobbit animated special. We'll talk more about that later. Yeah, the one that kind of got memory hold, I feel like.
The Tolkien scholar Douglas A. Anderson called the adaptation execrable.
Yeah, people really hated that.
I remember I have fond memories of it as a kid.
The completist in me is compelled to mention that Rankin Bass were not the first to develop a Rudolph cartoon. That honor goes to Fleischer Studios, which copyrighted a cartoon of Rudolph in 1948 as advertising for Montgomery Ward.
Yeah, they also did the Superman cartoons in the 30s that were a big influence on the art style of the Batman the Animated Series. That very kind of impressionist, expressionist, Fritz Lang, Stark Shadows.
Metropolis. For a writer for the Rudolph TV special, Rankin Bass tapped the awesomely named Romeo Mueller, a ringer who'd previously written for radio shows like The Jack Benny Show. In an amusing reminder of a pre-internet era, Mueller later said that he wanted to use May's original poem as the text for his script, but he couldn't find a copy of it, and instead he had to use the song as the source for his story. This would kind of become a theme with him because he would write the future Christmas Carol-based TV specials for Rankin Bass, including 1969's Frosty the Snowman and 1968's The Little Drummer Boy. And he also wrote 1970's Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which... Is that the one with the Heat Miser? Now I'm getting confused. Or is that A Year Without a Santa Claus?
I don't remember.
I need to check this. Which is the one...
Did you ever hear of Brother Theodore?
No, what's that?
He was the guy who voiced Gollum in that 77 movie, and he was a comedian, a stand-up comic. And the log line on his Wikipedia is, he was described as Boris Karloff, Salvador Dali, Nijinsky, and Red Skelton simultaneously. Which now I'm like, I need to know everything about this man immediately.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay, so this is not the one with the Heat Miser. That's A Year Without a Santa Claus. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is the origin story of Santa, where he starts off young with red hair. It's the one where he sings a song to children called Be Prepared to Pay. If you sit on my lap today, a kiss, a toy is the price you'll pay, which always used to creep me out.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, but we have Romeo Mueller, the guy who wrote the Rudolph Christmas special, to thank for that as well.
Gross.
Hell of a guy, Romeo Mueller. Like Robert May, Romeo Mueller also borrowed elements from his own life when writing the script for the Rudolph TV special. Hermie the elf, not Herbie, Hermie, is named after Mueller's childhood friend, who is named Herbie. I don't know why he just didn't name him Herbie. Rudolph's girlfriend, love interest, was named Clarice in honor of the bride-to-be of another close friend. So that's cute. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was officially in production in mid-1963 and continued for 18 months, which was a truly overwhelming amount of time for a TV production in that period. GE spent the modern equivalent of more than $4.5 million on the project, which required some 22 room-size sets. And, of course, we cannot forget their innovative animation technique known as Animagic, which gave every Rankin Bass production its distinctive and somewhat unnerving look, which we talked about at the top of the episode. It was, as you alluded to earlier, a painstaking process that involved moving jointed wooden felt puppets ever so slightly for each new frame, 24 frames per second of screen time. So, yeah, it's pretty tedious. The process was done by Japanese animators at the MOM Studios in Tokyo, where they were overseen by stop-motion pioneer Tadahito, Tad to his friends, Mochinaga. This guy is interesting and unexpectedly hardcore. Do you know this guy?
I was just reading about him now.
During World War II, he left Japan for Manchuria, which was a Japanese-occupied puppet state in China, where he produced propaganda films with Chinese, Korean, and Japanese animators. In 1947, Tad was instructed to create an animated propaganda film mocking Chinese politician Chiang Kai-shek, and to telegraph the message that Chiang Kai-shek was controlled by the U.S. Secretary of State, Tad created literal puppets of the two figures. So yeah, it's just like Dr. Seuss and Disney as a whole proud sort of history of legendary animators getting their start, or at least getting paid during wartime to make propaganda. Yeah. And this was China's first stop-motion puppet animation feature ever. And in 1955, he returned to Japan and brought this technique with him, using it to produce a beer commercial, which became this first stop-motion puppet animation ever done in Japan as well. So he's got 2 records in 2 separate countries. This commercial success inspired Tad to form the Puppet Animation Studio in Tokyo, and that's where the Rankin Bass people came when I wanted to make the Rudolph special.
Yes. Did you know about Nara before this?
No.
Yeah, my beloved...
Is that the haunted...
no, that's the Island of Deer, the sacred deer. And that's the only reason I know about it is because John Mann, friend of the pod, John Mann, who is obsessed with, fawns and deer. It's like it's like on his bucket list to go to the Island of Sacred Deer in Nara. So prior to filming, Tad traveled to Nara, Japan, a small city located east of Osaka, to visit the park there, the famous park there, which is a deer sanctuary established in 1880 to protect the area's population of sacred deer. These deer it's an incredible part of Japanese culture because they're so acclimated to human, non-threatening humans that they approach to ask for food, and they've even learned to mimic the act of bowing, which is pretty incredible. I think if I had a young deer, like a fawn, bow to me, I'd be I could die happy.
You'd be Snow White.
I would. Tad and his assistant spent 2 days observing the deer, and their attention to detail and the subsequent crafting of the deer puppets is apparent. It featured details such as delicate eyelids for the deer crafted from leather. More than 200 puppets were carved for the production of Rudolph. Ichiro Komuro, the puppet maker for the film, says that each character's puppet was recarved by hand for various movements and expressions, rather than using plaster and a mold, because it wouldn't have been exact. And he said the plaster head is very heavy for animation. So they because I'm a nerd, one of the things that they did for Nightmare Before Christmas to streamline this process was basically create a master puppet. I mean, a series of them that were jointed in different ways to do different things, but they have dozens of these little detachable masks for each character that mimics the entire range of mouth sounds and expressions. So for every main character, particularly Jack Skellington, there were dozens of these things. So to animate the speaking, they would just swap out different faces that were incrementally making different vowel sounds. And there were also these different expressions for them. I mean, it's the depth for that is really incredible. The dolls for Rudolph and Santa cost $5,000 each to make. What is that in 2023 money?
I'm going to do Price is Right rules. I'm going to say 50,000.
Okay, I'll say 65.
We both went over. It's 48,522.
Damn, that's crazy, dude. $48,000 doll.
Yeah, I don't really. How? Maybe it was for the assortment of all the dolls for that character.
Oh, sure.
Because that's like insane.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, they have different things. They have different terms for them. Like there's like hero dolls are like in miniature work. They have like the hero one or is like the one that'll be used for most of the close-ups. So it's often the most detailed one. And then there'll be like action ones that are jointed differently so that they can do complicated motions and such. So yeah, I don't know if they were only two of them and they each cost $48,000 or if there was a series of them that cost $48,000. The GE cigar smoking executive is like, $48,000, $5,000 for a Santa doll. They were also deceptively small, though. The puppet used for Rudolph is only 4 inches tall. And featured
So wait a minute. If that's $5,000,
yeah, can you imagine
$50,000 now?
Getting a line budget for that and be like 4-inch deer doll, $5,000. It would give you a heart attack.
So like government spending? Is it just like?
Well, it would have been GE, right? So.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 4-inch puppet for Rudolph featured a 12-volt light bulb painted red as his all-important nose. Santa stood twice as tall at 8 inches, and the Abominable Snowman is the tallest puppet of them at a whopping 14 inches tall. In order to keep the figures clean during production, only the animator and puppet maker were allowed to touch them in the studio, and they had to wear gloves.
No touching.
If only Jeffrey Tambor had adhered to that rule in real life. Unfortunately, the figures were sprayed with a magnetic flock. Flocking is like you use it in Christmas decorations. It's like the spray-on faux snow stuff to diffuse reflective light from the cameras. And the acid used in the flocking spray led to the puppet's rapid deterioration over time. Yeah, I'm trying to think of that's why they have that sort of that goes into their uncanniness. The fact that their like surface changes
shiny
with the different pressure from the different takes that were required of them. Anyway, Rankin Bass co-founder Jules Bass kept one of the Rudolph puppets on his desk, even though wires were coming out of its legs for the light bulb nose. Sadly, no one else in production seemed to be as sentimental about these figures. Most of them went missing soon after production wrapped, and it was assumed that they were merely thrown out. 9 of them were rescued by Rankin Bass' secretary, who let her children use them as toys before relegating them to the attic. Some 40 years later, they were sold to a collector who took them onto the Your Beloved Antiques Roadshow in 2006, where they were appraised for between $8,000 and $10,000. It's obviously worth saying that they were in extremely poor condition due to decades of poor storage and years of being thrown around by kids. Santa, disgustingly, had mold under his beard, his eyebrows were missing, his legs were broken, and half of his mustache was gone. He looked like a Bowery bum. Like,
this is Lost. Island of Misfit Toys version.
Rudolph's nose was also missing and replaced by a ball of red wax. This new owner shelled out $4,000 to have them professionally restored at an LA-based puppet fabrication studio called Screen Novelties. And good as new, the puppets made the trade show and convention circuit before being sold at auction in November of 2020, fetching $368,000, double the expected return. They are now in the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, Georgia. Didn't know that was a thing. Love it. You said you've read reports that someone listed puppets from the Rudolph special on eBay.
For $10 million, which I can't tell if that was, high. Even somebody who was associated with the production was like, that's ridiculous. Not even the Smithsonian would pay that for these. I have no further news as to if they sold and even who was selling them. I sort of get the sense that it was a scam.
Well, good. Speaking of mysteries, we have to talk about the mystery surrounding the scene set on the Island of Misfit Toys. We are speaking specifically about questions surrounding the ragdoll known as Dolly, as in a dolly for Sue.
Just asking questions.
We're doing our own research. Dolly is surrounded by all sorts of odd-looking toys, but there's nothing that appears to be overtly wrong with her, leading fans to wonder why she was there in the first place. She actually belonged to Typhoid Mary, and was thus responsible for the... No, I'm kidding.
That's the Velveteen Rabbit.
Other than lacking a nose, there was nothing wrong with Dolly that telegraphed Misfit. Arthur Rankin Jr. shed some light on the subject during a 2007 episode of NPR's Wait, Wait. Don't Tell Me. He claimed the doll, a last-minute addition, presumably for diversity reasons, was cast off by her mistress and was clinically depressed.
His words, not mine, mistress.
Giving her an origin story similar to that of Toy Story. Adding to the overall depressing nature of that scene, in the original version of the special, Rudolph, Hermie, and Yukon Cornelius, the minor gentleman with a pickaxe, promised to return to the Island of Misfit Toys. And then they never do. Fans were extremely upset by this, and angry letters poured into the Rankin Bass offices at such a rate that they eventually added a short scene for the second broadcast the following year, in 1965, where Santa can be seen delivering the Misfits to new homes. In order to make room for that new ending, though, something else had to be cut. During that original airing, there was a storyline about Yukon Cornelius finding a peppermint mine near Santa's workshop. Sadly, would go on to the chopping block. Now, creepily, in the special, you can still see Cornelius licking his pickaxe, but without mention of the peppermint mine, leading to viewers to wonder why this puppet is, I don't know, let's call it a Buffalo Bill kind of thing. That's weird behavior. That's a weird thing to do. Lick your pickaxe. And while we're on the topic of alternate versions, 2 songs have been swapped in and out of the special over the years. Both are sung by Rudolph and Hermie. In the original, the duo sings a song called We're a Couple of Misfits.
Like us.
Aww. After the first airing, it was replaced with the song Fame and Fortune.
So this is all good, but enough about the puppets. It's time to talk about the real people, starting with the one, the only, the legendary Mr. Burl Ives. Come on, the famous folky, right? Folky?
Folksy.
Folksy, thank you. The famous folksy singer lent his voice to Sam the Snowman, the narrator of the special, who was modeled, of course, to resemble the rotund Ives. Before Ives was tapped to narrate, Larry Mann, the voice of Yukon Cornelius, performed the narration. His version's never been heard publicly, but those who've listened to the recording say that Mann put on a Brooklyn-like accent, which I find hilarious. Release the Mann tapes. Ives is kind of the only big-name voice in the special. Well, not kind of, he is. The rest of the parts were performed by Canadian voiceover actors in the time-honored tradition of inexpensive TV production. Rankin Bass ventured to the Great White North, a la Are You Afraid of the Dark, and many other shows. Also, Canada was one of the last countries still producing scripted radio dramas at that time in the early 60s. In America, they'd been kind of phased out, so there were a lot of vocal pros on call in Canada. Billy May Richards provided the voice for Rudolph. And, you know, these days it's not uncommon in animation for female voiceover artists to voice male characters, especially young male characters like Chucky and Tommy and the Rugrats. But for whatever reason, Rankin Bass wanted to keep the fact that Rudolph was voiced by a woman a secret. And so they credited Billy May Richards as just Billy Richards. Weird. Burl Ives' star power made him the only actor to receive residuals on the show over the years, and the other main cast only received $1,000 over a 3-year period.
There it is.
The special has since gone on to make roughly in the neighborhood of $100 million.
There it is.
This was admittedly a sore subject for Billy May Richards, the voice of Rudolph, but she admitted to feeling, quote, so lucky to have something that has made such an impact on people, because it's all about the story, first and foremost, she says. So that is a generous read of a not very generous situation. But thankfully, there's a cute coda.
Oh,
Decades
thank God.
later, I know, thank you. It's Christmas. You know, we have to have it. In the early 2000s, Billy May Richards ended up becoming neighbors with Paul Soles, another voiceover actor who was the voice of Hermie the Elf. So the voices of Rudolph and the elf were living next to each other at the Performing Arts Lodge in Toronto, a housing development for artists and actors. I get the sense that it's an old folks' home for actors.
Yeah.
And she told the Chicago Tribune, "It's a great place to be, the only place for misfits anyway." That is cute.
That's cute. I like that a lot.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the TV special, premiered at 5:30 p.m. on December 6th, 1964. So that was 59 years ago yesterday. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice that there's actually an error in the end credits with the Roman numeral copyright date. Thanks to a dropped M, it says the special came out in 1164. And I'm not sure if this caused any copyright weirdness similar to the Night of the Living Dead and It's a Wonderful Life, who had... Well, what was the Night of the Living Dead situation? It's just they never filed copyright on the movie, so it can be shown on TV for free.
Yeah, I think it was something like a filing error. Yeah, but all of the Romero stuff is a mess. You know, I mean, it's basically down to this one of his producers that he worked with. Yeah, when you do stuff on by the skin of your teeth and hair trigger, you don't have an eye on the future. But yeah, man. Oh no, it's even better. You know what it was?
What?
The original distributor failed to replace the copy. So the title was originally called Night of the Flesh Eaters, and they renamed it for distribution and failed to replace the copyright notice when they retitled it and recut it.
Wow.
And several years after the fact, they realized when they were screening it that it had no copyright notice on it.
You can't just add that?
I mean, you could probably have sued the guy who distributed it, but good Lord.
Wow. Great job, guys.
Yeah.
But I would assume that this has been cleared up somehow because it has been broadcast every year since, making it the longest running Christmas special on American television.
Rankin Bass made numerous children's holiday specials after this, including two that specifically followed the adventures of Rudolph, which you probably haven't heard of. First came Rudolph's Shiny New Year in 1976, which was also written by Romeo Mueller and had music from Johnny Marks. Then in 1979 came the feature-length Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. Wouldn't that just be like Frosty Dies? like a snuff film? Also, I don't think reindeer are supposed to live in hot climates either. Anyway. Even less memorable was Rankin Bass's attempt at creating original IP with a knockoff Rudolph figure called Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey.
That sounds like something that we would make up on our non-existent sequel pitching show.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the donkey has like a tenuous connection to Christmas because he's always in the manger, right? He's a manger animal with old Jesus.
Young Jesus.
Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah.
I prefer Dominic the Donkey.
Who's that?
You don't know Dominic the Donkey?
I probably do. I just don't care.
Oh, no, I want to get your live reaction to this right now.
It's going to get playfully racist, isn't it?
Kinda. I mean, as an Italian from Pennsylvania.
Hey, jingity jing, it's Dominic the donkey. Jingity jing, the Italian Christmas donkey. La 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 la.
What do you think?
My people have suffered so much. Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey was released in 1977, based on Gene Autry's unsuccessful Christmas follow-up to Rudolph. And as you might have gathered, Nestor is a long-eared donkey who is ostracized by his peers for a physical abnormality that helps save Christmas. In Nestor's case, he, as I mentioned earlier, it's a nativity situation. He protects Mary during a sandstorm by wrapping her in his ears so that she and Joseph can safely get to Bethlehem. Rankin Bass took a lot of L's in the late 70s, especially with their poorly received...
Sandstorm.
What's that?
I just hear the song Sandstorm.
It'd be great.
Don't listen!
It'd be great if they did like a slow horror, like reverbed out, slow plus reverb version
like
of
low piano.
Yeah, for the reboot of. Hey, they'll get around to rebooting Nestor at some point. I'm kind of shocked we haven't had like a atrocious real life CGI Rudolph.
Wait. The donkey is going to be related to the donkey from Shrek, and they're going to like somehow tie it in with the Shrek thing.
Oh God, yeah. Santa will be played by who's an old guy who's hot right now. Bruce Dern.
Okay.
Trying to pick the weirdest, oldest
I was
guy.
gonna say,
I probably
Jeff
could.
Bridges. Jeff Bridges is probably old
Yeah,
enough
he's
now.
aged into that. Nestor will be voiced by Zendaya, or possibly Jacob Elordi of Euphoria, best known for currently playing Elvis in Sofia Coppola's Elvis movie, currently playing, probably. Maybe it's already out of theaters, who knows. Joseph will be played by Matthew McConaughey. Mary will also be played by Zendaya. The baby Jesus will be played by Jack Black, and he will sing a song. What else we got? The three kings, the three wise men, will be played by Kevin Hart, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Megan
Trainer.
Jesus Christ. No, that's good, because then she can sing too. Yeah, and it'll be across. Yeah. It'll be across gender. We'll be doing gender blind casting. That's perfect. And the rest. Rankin Bass's poorly received adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Return of the King. Yeah, I think everyone just wants to talk about the unused or unmade Ralph Bakshi version that was like really intense.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, they shut down after Christmas 2000, which is so funny, even though it's an accurate date. Just sounded like Christmas 2000. Following the release of Santa, Baby. It's Santa, Baby, which is, of course, a nod to Eartha Kitt. The movie featured vocal talents of legendary black performers, including Patti LaBelle as the narrator, once again, the aforementioned Eartha Kitt, Gregory Hines, Vanessa Williams, and Tom Joyner. And though the studio is gone, their plethora of TV specials continue to inspire modern filmmakers, including the aforementioned Henry Selick, and that's it. And the rest.
Of the many specials created by Rankin Bass, Rudolph is undoubtedly the most iconic and beloved. In 2018, The Hollywood Reporter conducted a poll about holiday movies and specials, and the winner was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. A staggering 83% of the people who took part in the poll had a favorable opinion of the film. Rudolph's creator, Robert May, credits the success of his character with the message at the heart of the story. In addition to being a modern retelling of The Ugly Duckling, it provides a valuable lesson for all children as a, quote, story of acceptance with a beautiful moral. In May's words, tolerance and perseverance can overcome adversity. Allow me to quote from the writer Ronald Lankford from his Cultural History of American Christmas Songs. Much like the modern Santa Claus song, Rudolph's story is for children. More specifically, it's a children's story about overcoming adversity and earning, by personal effort, respect in the adult world. As a young deer or child with a handicap that turns out to be an unrecognized asset, Rudolph comes to the rescue of an adult at the last minute on Christmas Eve. When Rudolph saves the day, he gains respect from both his peers and the adult world. The story of Rudolph, then, is the fantasy story made to order for American children. Each child has the need to express and receive approval for his or her individuality and or special qualities. Rudolph's story embodies the American dream for the child, written large because of the cultural significance of Christmas.
That's all fine.
Thanks for listening, folks.
I'm Alex Heigl.
And I'm Jordan Runtagh. We'll catch you next time.
Too Much Information was a production of iHeart Radio.
The show's executive producers are Noel Brown and Jordan Runtagh.
The show's supervising producer is Michael Alder June.
The show was researched, written, and hosted by Jordan Runtagh and Alex Heigl,
with original music by Seth Applebaum and the Ghost Funk Orchestra. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more podcasts on iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.